up this weekend, if you know anything about Fight Night picks, my guy, Leonardo Santos, is going to be taking on Jared Flash Gordon. And for my guy, Leonardo Santos, I know the last two fights have probably been the worst two fights of his career. There's glimpses. There's little bits of hope. But for Santos, it's just kind of crazy. I mean, it's been the weirdest run in the UFC. It's been the weirdest career that we've ever seen. I mean, he's kind of like the Nomar Garcia-Parra, the Andrew Jones. He's a little bit like,
I'm thinking Adam Dunn. Like, Adam Dunn had more plate appearances and via the 3 true outcomes, than you could. So he had 51% of all of his at-bats and via walk, strikeout, or home run. Fun fact about Adam Dunn.
He's kind of like the Dave Stieb of this division. It's really weird because at the end of the day, is he a Hall of Famer?
No.
He bridges on it with the resume that he does have. Because if you just take it for part and parcel, he was competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments in the late 90s, early 2000s. They went, hey, Leo, you want to fight the hottest prospect in all of MMA? Here's Takanori Gomi. And then he loses in Shuto, Brazil in 2002. And that's fine, because after he fights there, he ends up fighting over on The Ultimate Fighter, wins The Ultimate Fighter Brazil, beats Thiago Santos, Maheta, at 170 pounds in that tournament. He goes on a 12-fight unbeaten streak from 2010 to 2021. I mean, he's got wins over who? Adriano Martins, the guy that cold-cocked Islam Makhachev. He beats, who else? Anthony Rocco Martin. He knocks out Kevin Lee. And nobody's ever going to remember that because of his last 2 fights when he was over 40 years old. He fights Grant Dawson, and he did not look good at all in that fight. He fights a guy in Clay Guida where he drops him and tries to finish him in the first round and then loses all steam by the second round. He is a jiu-jitsu specialist at Nova União, which is full of killers. I mean, Jose Aldo's trained out of Nova União for the majority of his career. For Leonardo Santos, I mean, the accreditations, he's a 4th degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, IBJJF world champion. All of these things that I say, if you just took them for what they're worth, man, this guy's a Hall of Famer, isn't he, Craig? You just wrote the script. Here's the induction ceremony. Craig Allen up there. I give the speech, but inactivity's plagued his career, doesn't fight very often, and what we've seen in his last 3 fights, including the Roman Bogatov performance where Bogatov lost 2 points due to knee strikes, it just didn't look like the old Leo Santos, even though he did look all right against Guida in the first round. Taking on a guy in Jared Gordon, who's also been there, done that, former CFFC champ, featured on Dana White's Looking for a Fight back when I think Nick the Tooth was still a thing. Gets a win over Bill Algeo. Matt, for Jared Gordon, he's had good spots in the UFC. He's had bad spots. He had that 3-fight win streak before he faced off against one, Grant Dawson, and got submitted. Both guys probably don't want to hang out with Grant Dawson very much, but for you in this matchup, Matt, it's tough seeing Leo Santos this way.
He has a problem that most 42-year-old athletes would have. He gets tired faster.
Hard time getting it up?
Yeah, pretty much. He just gets tired faster than pretty much everybody else in the division, and his attacks aren't all that sustainable at this point of his career. Yes, he can throw with power. Yes, he can finish you on the mat. But the problem is, fatigue kind of takes away most of your skills, and when he gets tired, he is not the same skilled fighter that he is in the first 3 or 4 minutes of a fight. And the problem was there even when he was younger. It wasn't as accentuated because he was still in his prime, if you will. But at this point of his career, I don't know what he can do other than knock out Jared Gordon very fast like he did against Stevie Ray and hope to get a win in this matchup, because Jared Gordon, not that he was made in a lab to beat very many fighters, but he is kind of made to beat a fighter like Leonardo Santos. He does wrestle a lot. He does have phenomenal cardio. Not the best finisher on the mat, but he is defensively sound, and he doesn't give you a lot of space either when he does grapple with you. He's not someone who really floats on top and is going to give you a lot of opportunities to pull off a submission off of your back. You normally have to get on top of him and really beat it out of him if that's what you want to get. Hashtag phrasing, but still. For Santos, again, those skills would have been there 5-6 years ago. I just don't necessarily think he's going to be able to carry those skills late into a fight against Jared Gordon. And thinking about this fight, I immediately thought of the Hakron Diaz fight that sort of got Gordon known in the UFC. Diaz was a guy who had a lot of hype, but in the UFC was a little bit past it, so we never really got to see the prime version of him. But Gordon just beat the brakes off him, really. Took the fight from him, made his ground and pound really ugly, and Diaz is a guy who honestly fights in a very similar manner to Santos, especially at this stage of their careers. So it's not that Gordon should be a minus 330 favorite against a lot of guys in this division, but that at this stage of Santos' career, I can more than easily see a world where Jared Gordon gets 2 10-8 rounds and finishes them in the third. But I could see a world where Santos is able to land some power shots early where he still does have a full gas tank, and they could be damaging enough to put Gordon out.
The big thing about Jared Gordon that's always brought up by the broadcast, his grandfather was Sal Farello, a boxer who went 38-3-1, so that's always the talking point. And Jared Gordon is a formidable boxer guy.
He's kind of slow on the feet.
He's switched up camps in the past. He's a Killcliff FC guy now. Still sounds weird when I say it. I don't know about the energy drinks. I did hear Joe Rogan on Theo Vaughn's podcast say, hey, they got my flavor now. It's pineapple jalapeno. And I tell you what, I've had those ginger ales that are spicy. I don't like spicy and sweet. That's not my deal.
Oh, I love it. I'm not going to lie.
I don't like it. But if I do look at it for Jared Gordon, here's some crazy things. 6-4 in the UFC. 4th all-time in lightweight history with significant strike accuracy at 56.4%. Number 1 is Gaethje. He's 10th all-time at strikes landed per minute, 5.42. He's 10th all-time in the lightweight division strike differential at 1.54. He can defend takedowns. He can go for takedowns. He can strike on the feet. He can match you a little bit with your striking. Santos obviously has an advantage in terms of height and reach over most guys in the lightweight division. It's just, how sustainable are things for Santos at this point?
He must cut an incredible amount of weight to get down to 155, and that could not be easy on his body at 42 and a half years of age.
And I've seen Gordon go out there and go back and forth tit for tat against a stronger guy, a bigger, longer type of guy in Bill Algeo, who is 6 feet tall and has a 73-inch reach, and he was able to get the win over him to win that CFFC belt by grinding on him. That was how Gordon was able to get it done. And Gordon's fought wrestlers in the past and guys that are good. I mean, Chris Fishgold's an accredited Polaris grappler. Jared Gordon was able to take things down to the mat, rinse and repeat with his takedowns, ground things out. So we'll see how it plays out this weekend. Gordon, as was mentioned, is a pretty big favorite. Open minus 225, minus 330 right now for Leo Santos. Open plus 190, plus 255. And if we have a look at the Tapology votes, Matt, I don't anticipate they're going to be very close. I'm going to say over under 85% Gordon.
I think they'll be under, honestly.
Think they're going to be under? They're slightly over. 758 total votes, 87% Gordon, 83% by decision for the 13% that have Santos. It's like a lifesaver pack. 35% decision, 30% submission, 29% by knockout. Those numbers don't add up. But in this matchup here, Matt, I think Jared Gordon can have success keeping things on the feet and landing some volume.
I do worry about him on the feet, if I'm being completely honest. Like, Jared Gordon's been hurt and finished in a number of fights throughout
all of
his
his
career.
losses, all 5 of them, are by finish.
So I don't necessarily think standing on the feet with a guy who has an obvious power advantage over him is necessarily the best idea. I think he is defensively sound enough on the mat to avoid some of those big explosions from Santos. I think the clinch up against the cage is going to be a big tool for Gordon to really wear on Santos, try to diminish that power bar of him, especially early on in this fight. And then maybe he will be able to even go for a finish in the second, third round, because if Gordon can get some of that ground and pound going, it is exhausting for the bottom fighter to be on the receiving end of that. And I think Gordon can have a lot of success. I'm just going to end it with this. Why the hell did Jared Gordon ever fight Charles Oliveira when Charles Oliveira had won like 6 in a row? That might be the worst fight that the matchmakers have ever put together, and it makes me question just everything about some of this sport sometimes.
Hey, Jared, you want a shot at the title? You got to go through Charles first. Sign me up, coach. Yeah, Gordon wasn't able to get it done. The fight for me, the Santos fight against Bogatov, where he was just held up against the cage for large portions of that fight, gives me a little bit of pause. The Grant Dawson lasting hammer fist to Leo Santos out. And then he looked great against Guida, and then in the second round didn't have enough left in the tank. I don't know how the referee didn't end that fight, if we're all being honest with each other, because Santos just continued to hammer away.
You could have said that about Nate Landwehr last night, though, and look at him. He ended up winning the fight.
Wild fight. So both of us going with Flash Gordon in this fight to get the win. It breaks my soul to not talk about Leo Santos in the winner's column here, but we have an interesting fight nonetheless. A main card that includes Hunsucker and Pedro and Aldo and Dvalishvili. So it should be a lot of fun. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.